John Doyle has a YouTube channel that has 168,000 subscribers, so quite a lot, with a series on it called Heck Off Commie. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at this video today, entitled Hollywood Promotes Killing Babies as Fun and Quirky. I'm pretty sure I know the direction that this is going. It's going to be shitting on the idea of abortion, a legitimate medical procedure, and trying to shit on the women that utilize that medical service. But let's take a look and see what he has to say.
Fine, you're fine. You always use a condom, so you're fine. Hey, dude.
I've got this thing.
That's weird. Does that actually happen, dude? In women's restrooms, do you like peek over the top of the stall next to you? I don't do that. I've never seen that happen in a men's restroom. I don't know. I've never gone into a women's restroom, so maybe that is the thing. It's just kind of weird.
If a young woman needs a procedure, is that possible? Where's the closest facility? There's an Albuquerque in Missouri? The law won't let me get one without my parents knowing. I know we're not close anymore. True. And I'm the last person that you want to help.
Accurate.
But I need your help, and I don't have anywhere else to go.
Go where?
To get the thing, the procedure.
So you're hiding this from your man, your best friend,
Hey, girl.
and your Jesus freak parents, and you thought, why not ask?
Okay, so this right here kind of speaks to kind of our societal and cultural opinions, at least in America, on abortion, where young women that find themselves with a pregnancy that they either don't want or can't go through with or support the child after childbirth need a necessary medical procedure, but there is such a social stigma about it that they feel they have to hide it from people, and in some situations they do, like the situation that they brought up here in this trailer. I wonder how much of this trailer they're going to show. I hope I don't get copyrighted by HBO for doing this, but like you have deeply religious parents that will shame a young woman for getting pregnant, refuse her access to health care to try and resolve the issue, and in a lot of cases young women are removed from their kicked out for simply becoming pregnant or having it revealed that they're sexually active, despite the fact that that's perfectly normal for a young person to do. But yeah, it's kind of sad that this is a not uncommon situation for young women to face in this country, and it's despicable that our society treats young women who find themselves pregnant and are in need of an abortion as whores, and as treats them like shit, despite the fact that they're too young to raise a child. And I don't know about you, but almost every single person I went to high school with was sexually active in high school. Some of them ended up getting pregnant, but and I don't know if there were any young women that needed to get an abortion during high school. I know there were a few people that had children, a few young women that had children while they were in high school. And I live in a pretty liberal state, and I don't know if they ended up having that child because they didn't have access to abortion care if they needed it. Some of them may have wanted to keep the child, and that's their right, and they're willing. If they want to do that, that's perfectly fine. But if they wanted to terminate the pregnancy, they should also have access to that without being shit on by society, without being shamed by their families, risking homelessness, or in many locations, particularly in the South, literally not having access to that procedure.
Bailey Butler to drive me hundreds of miles because she probably doesn't have anything to do anyway.
Kind of, yes. Bailey, come on!
I'm just messing with you. You're right, I do not have anything going on.
I thought you drove a Camry.
But it's a road trip adventure because girl power? Whoa!
I'm not gonna lie, I kind of like his intro, despite the fact that he's a piece of shit. His intro is well produced, well made, and it's entertaining.
John Doyle in Heck Off, Commie.
Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Heck Off Commie. It's been a while since we talked about abortion, so this will be a good one. I've been called radically pro-life before, which just means that it's very difficult to present me with circumstances which I would believe justify the killing of innocent life, but the trailer for this movie actually came out.
Well, that's a weird way to phrase it. An abortion isn't killing an innocent life. It's a removal of what could medically be considered a parasite, and allowing women to have bodily autonomy. But go on.
A few days ago, and when I first saw it, I was very surprised, but at the same time, I was not surprised at all, because, you know, you watch it.
I was surprised, but I wasn't surprised.
And you think, wow, I can't believe that they would present a teenage mother getting an abortion without telling her parents as just a fun road trip comedy. That's disgusting. That's depraved. But then you look outside and you remember that we're going to hell in a handcart. So in a way, it makes perfect sense. But speaking of things that...
Well, a young woman shouldn't need her parents' permission to get a medical procedure done, especially with how old that young woman was. But yeah, I'm sorry. Young people should have control over their medical and personal autonomy, and shouldn't need permission from their parents to get what could potentially be life-saving medical treatment.
That make perfect sense. Why do you think that the left champions abortion so much? Why do you...
Because it gives women more bodily autonomy that's been robbed of them for all of mankind, mankind's history. Women have been treated as second-class citizens. They've been treated as simply baby-making factories, and that was the only purpose they served. And we're moving towards a cultural position where women can control what happens to their own bodies. And people like John Doyle here don't like that too much. Because people that hold these kinds of views believe that women serve very specific purposes to create, have, and then care for children, and to be subservient to the man that they belong to.
Do you think that they celebrate it so much? Why are there parades for it? Why do they dedicate ceremonies and clothing to it? Why do they evangelically praise it and remind you of the abortions that they've had, trying to convince you and perhaps even themselves that it was okay and that it was the right thing to do? Well, the reason is
because it was the right thing to do, and it's because it's such a hot button issue, because you've got chuds like you that shit all over women for having a simple medical procedure done just because you think it's icky. It's a controversial topic. It's the same reason why we have pride parades in America and around the world. It's because being gay is considered controversial for some fucking reason. People are villainized for being gay just the same way that women are villainized for having an abortion. Yeah, it's a hot button issue. They're going to talk about it. They're going to bring awareness to the fact and normalize this medical procedure to try and remove the stigma of women having an abortion, to encourage more women that need them to actually... All right, sorry about that. So let's keep going.
And clothing to it. Why do they evangelically praise it and remind you of the abortions that they've had, trying to convince you and perhaps even themselves that it was okay and that it was the right thing to do? Well, the reason is that abortion is the crown jewel of their religion. It is the ultimate state of liberal philosophy. It is the logical conclusion of liberal...
I'm not sure what religion they're talking about, because every mainstream religion in America hates abortion. They think it's an abomination. They believe it's murder, yada, yada, yada. The reason why the left, liberals, and women in particular in America venerate abortion so much is because of how controversial it is, and how people like you shit on it all the time, John Doyle, and try to convince women that they are terrible people for simply seeking medical attention.
Philosophy. It means that they are so liberated and so autonomous that they can literally murder another human being if its life is inconvenient to them. It means that they get to play God. And perhaps you don't believe that abortion is murder, so we'll get to that a little bit later. But if you think about what differentiates the left from the right, it can most simply be articulated as the belief in hierarchy versus the belief in total equality. And a lot of people have this take of, well, the left and right paradigm is false. It's not real. Both sides are the same. Kind of cringe. Also just not true. Like, politicians lying doesn't invalidate the historical and philosophical nature of the right and the left. And that category...
It kind of does. I mean, we aren't talking about the left here. We're talking about Republicans and Democrats. But yeah, both Republicans and Democrats have philosophies. Both Republican and Democrats lie, both in the media and as politicians. But yeah, it's a philosophy between the two, and they're pretty equivalent. Republicans, in my opinion, are much, much worse than Democrats, but Democrats aren't perfect either. That's why I'm not a Democrat. I'm a leftist.
Polarization dates back to the aftermath of the French Revolution, where those who believed in total equality sat on the left and those who believed in hierarchy sat on the right. And so liberalism's belief
That's true. Leftists advocate for the abolition of hierarchy in our society through socialism and through socialist programs that allow all people to have access to basic human needs, whereas the right-wingers love hierarchy because it allows people like Jeff Bezos to become ultra wealthy and have $200 billion in net worth, while having people in the richest country in America starving to death and living on the street. Republicans love hierarchy.
Even total equality, the idea that we're all born the same, has led to the belief that man ought to be liberated even from the constraints and unfairness of nature. That nature, which produces hierarchy, also known as inequality, as well as human life. So to be truly liberated means to even be liberated from nature, which means that the state must enforce equality, since if left alone, inequality will result, and also to be liberated from the natural consequence of sex, which is pregnancy. And so,
pregnancy is a result of sex, but it is not the natural consequence of being sexually active. It is perfectly reasonable for a woman to be able to be sexually active without having to deal with raising a child she doesn't want, can't afford, or cannot bring into this world without significant health risks to herself.
as we can see, the results of this have been things like abortion and state-enforced equality of outcome. So it's all connected, and that's why abortion is so important.
There is no state-enforced equality of outcome. If that were the case, we wouldn't have such massive inequality in this country. I don't know what you're talking about.
To them, the most fundamental characteristic of a human being and of nature in general, the ability to reproduce, has been conquered by liberalism through abstract rationalizations. There will never be a greater accomplishment for liberalism, since nothing takes precedence over the value of human life, unless they can manage to scientifically clone people or to actualize asexual reproduction. But only then will.
That's not the greatest victory by the left. The greatest victory by the left would be reaching total equality and having the means of production owned by the worker rather than the capitalist. Also, the existence of abortion doesn't mean that nobody's having babies. Both myself and my wife are very pro-choice, yet we have a child because we chose to, and we wanted to keep the child. We were in a position where we could. Many people across this country simply aren't. That's just the nature of the beast, and abortion allows women to have the bodily autonomy to decide that though they may have fallen pregnant, that is not in itself a death sentence or the end of their life, and choose to not bring a child into the world where their existence would only be plagued by starvation and poverty. It's perfectly reasonable.
Something even begin to rival the magnitude of abortion as the quintessential accomplishment of liberalism. The complete disregard.
It is not. I don't know why he's trying to push this narrative. Abortion is not the quintessential accomplishment of liberalism. Racial equality, or working towards it, because we haven't achieved that yet, but working towards racial equality, in my opinion, and gender equality would be the biggest achievements of liberalism, and we're not even there yet. We're still working on that.
Regard of the other, over whom one has a host of moral and perhaps even biological obligations in pursuit of the divine self. It's abhorrent. But anyways, we'll watch the trailer, we'll go over that, and then we'll talk about why this movie is so terrible and harmful, and also why abortion in general is so terrible and harmful, along with what all this means for our country. But before we get into that, I do have to tell you very quickly about a service I've been using for the last few months called ExpressVPN.
Oh, no, you proselytize on your own time.
Companies trying to sell your data for. So you can go to ExpressVPN, spend a lot of time doing to find out how you. ExpressVPN.com/Doyle. I spend a lot of time doing research in coffee shops or in libraries, and if I weren't using a VPN, the people connected to the same Wi-Fi network as me access to your information, and then the Internet 7 customers at ExpressVPN.com.
Fine, you're fine.
You showed this at the
I used
beginning.
the condom, so you're fine.
Some important context for this movie, by the way, is that the reason she needs to get this abortion, the reason that she needs to kill this child, is because according to the.
It's not a child. Right-wingers love to phrase abortion as murdering a child, despite the fact that I think it's 98% of abortions take place during the first trimester when it's still a zygote or a clump of cells. It is not a child that you are murdering.
The descriptions of the film, having this child would squander her Ivy League college dreams. And this is not unlike when we saw Michelle Williams praise abortion at the Golden Globes and say that if it weren't for her abortion, she never would have been able to receive that award. Perhaps this is operating on a different scale, but the premise remains the same, which is that the life of a human being is second to my desires. That not only is it permissible, but it's actually good to sacrifice human life at the altar of fame, fortune,
There is no sacrifice of human life in an abortion. But that being said, the bodily autonomy of an actual human being, a full-blown, full-grown human being, is more important than the viability of a zygote or a clump of cells. Yes, that is accurate.
Or status. It's evil. More specifically, it's satanic, but I'm sure we'll get into that later. I'd be surprised.
It's not satanic. There's nothing religious about abortion. Jesus Christ. Anything I don't like is the devil. It's kind of pathetic that they always jump to this argument that anything I don't like must be satanic. Gay people, satanic. Abortion, satanic. Women in the workplace, satanic. Black people having equal rights, satanic. It's been the same song and dance for generations.
Surprised. If we could avoid it, might have to go preacher mode. We'll see. But this whole leftist narrative of, oh, well, motherhood, serving your family, that's not empowering for women. You know what is empowering for women? Serving an employer.
It's empowering for some women, but other women don't find fulfillment in that, and that's perfectly fine for a woman to decide what she wants to do with her own life. This is what I was talking about earlier. Right-wingers' only concern is controlling women and making sure that they are baby factories, barefoot, pregnant in the kitchen. That's what they want, and any deviation from that is abhorrent to them because it takes away their ability to control women through their reproductive process.
Not getting married and having kids, but working 50 hours a week, entering numbers into a spreadsheet, or writing legal briefs, that's what it really means to be a woman. And as it would turn out,
that's what it means to be a successful human being to some people. It has nothing to do with gender.
As we've experienced a few decades of that supposed female empowerment, women are experiencing record levels of depression. They are more depressed than men, they're becoming more depressed relative to men, and they're more depressed than their mothers and their grandmothers at the same stages of their lives. This is
You have to think that maybe the fact that women have been given the opportunity and told that they can do these things, such as becoming a lawyer, becoming a corporate executive, becoming successful in a career field, and then constantly having it shoved back at them that they shouldn't be doing that, and having society do everything in its power to prevent them from being able to achieve those goals. Do you think that might play into the rates of depression in women? You think that has something to do with it? Or is it just because they don't want to have kids? That must be it.
This is referred to as the paradox of declining female happiness. And so for Hollywood to come in and communicate.
Also, depression has been on the rise, regardless of gender, across the spectrum, for at least my generation and the following generation, but for decades. This is not just relevant to the abortion debate or women's rights. Depression and suicidality have been going up for years.
Communicate to young girls, hey, it's totally normal for you to be sexually active in high school. Saving yourself for marriage, that's outdated.
Yeah, it's perfectly normal for people to act on their sexual impulses while going through an incredibly hormonal period known as puberty. Men have been doing it for generations, for basically all of human history, and it's weird to you and people who think like you that women are now being allowed to do the same. You just don't like that women are being able to do the same things as men.
Back then weren't as smart as we are now. I mean, they still thought that only women could give birth, but we're smarter now. And also, if you happen to get pregnant doing that thing,
people with uteruses can give birth. Not just women, people with uteruses.
That is designed to get you pregnant, just kill the kid. You gotta go be a number at a university, and then you gotta go be a number at some company. Don't settle down, don't have a family. That's not what you want. You want.
So it's perfectly acceptable for a man to be a number at a university, and it's perfectly acceptable for a man to be just a number at a corporation or at a company, but not for women. They have to make babies.
To do what the men do, because the best way to empower women is to rape them of their feminine identity and then tell.
Holy shit, rape them of their feminine identity. So women choosing to not have kids is raping them of their feminine identity? Holy shit, dude. What the fuck is wrong with you? Jesus Christ.
Tell them that femininity is oppressive and they have to strive to be just like men. And the only people who actually get to proudly embody womanhood are delusional men. That's what our daughters are learning. Our daughters are taught.
That's a woman. That's a trans woman. She identifies as a woman. It's a woman. She's not delusional just because she transitioned. I know you think it's icky and you don't understand it because you refuse to, but she's not delusional. Holy shit. She's not delusional. She's just trans.
that the defining characteristic of their identity as a woman is not their ability to create life, but rather their choice, their rights to kill that life if it's inconvenient to them.
Giving birth is not the only thing that makes somebody a woman. A woman is anybody who identifies as a woman. A woman feeling empowered enough to go into the workforce is just as much of a woman as someone as a woman that wants to stay home and make children. If that's what they want to do, they should have the right to do that, and they should be empowered to do so. The women's only purpose in society is not just to make children. They can do everything that men want to do, or at least they should be able to, and they should be encouraged to do so. And if they choose to have children, then we should encourage that. But if they choose not to, we should encourage that as well.
It's disgusting. Let's empower women by rejecting the fundamental characteristics of womanhood. That's why the pioneering feminists didn't want...
What are the fundamental characteristics of womanhood? Can you please lay those out to me? I'm pretty sure I know what you mean by that, but that's not an inherent characteristic of womanhood. That may be biologically female. A characteristic of being biologically female is the ability to procreate and create children. But that's not a fundamental characteristic of womanhood.
Women to even have a choice. Simone de Beauvoir told Betty Friedan that if women were allowed to make the choice for themselves, then too many would want to stay home and raise children. And so the only way for them to achieve the goals of their narrative was to indoctrinate generations of women into this completely artificial perversion of what it means to be a woman and what it means to be a mother. I mean, the movie is literally called Unpregnant. What does that even mean? That's not...
Unpregnant is when you get unpregnant. What do you mean? What does that mean? She's getting an abortion. She's becoming unpregnant. It's in the name, buddy.
Not a real concept. That's a euphemism. Typically, you'd expect that to mean like, oh, she gave birth to the child. But no, in this case, it would mean that she killed it. And
no, it means that she got an abortion. There was no child. It was a zygote. It was a clump of cells. It was not a person. There is no murder. There is no killing.
They're not even taking the extreme approach, right? Like, they're not even taking the, oh, well, the mother's health was... No, they're just saying, well, she wants to go to college, so she should be able to kill it. And these types of reasons make up the vast majority of reasons for women getting abortions, by the way, which is why you can never compromise with these people on anything, because they will never stop. And I also like how this is where we're at now with teenage movies. Like, this is what the coming of age stories are now. And they're only going to get worse from here. And you can trace the evolution like, dude, let's throw a party while mom and dad are gone. Dude, let's drink beer. We don't have to tell our parents. Hey, let's sneak out Saturday night so we can go make out in a car with bench seating. And now it's like, hey,
These are all things that people have been doing forever. Especially here in America. That has been very common, at least the last 100 years. Throwing parties when your parents are gone, making out in a car with bench seats, accidentally getting pregnant and having to resolve that issue. It's only been recently that they've had access to doing that. But all of these things that you just listed off, dude, have been things that have been going on for a long-ass time. This is not a new phenomenon. My parents did it, their parents did it, and their parents did it. I never did that because I was a nerd and I was homeschooled for most of my education. But when I went to high school, I didn't have friends, so I didn't throw parties when my parents were out of town or go make out in a car with bench seating or anything like that. But that was me. I knew a lot of people that did that, though. This isn't something that's new. This has been going on for a long time. I don't know why you're presenting this as some new phenomenon that the youth of America are doing now because abortion. It's not a thing.
Pregnant, I want to kill the child, let's go on a road trip. Also, like, when she's waiting for the test results, she's telling herself like, oh, I can't be pregnant because I always use a condom, which is really just sad because you've got this girl who's sexually active in high school, and through habitual participation of the act designed to create human life, she manages to create a human life. And because she was irresponsible, because she wasn't ready to be a mother yet, now that life, which she is
it seems like she was pretty responsible if she said that she always used a condom. There's nothing wrong with women being sexually active. There's nothing wrong with men being sexually active. And as long as you're safe about it, the risk of pregnancy is significantly reduced, but it's still, there's no 100% effective way to prevent pregnancy. And I know these people are going to say, well, abstinence is 100% effective, but abstinence-only education doesn't work. People are going to have sex, and making condoms and birth control and ultimately abortion accessible to youth in America will go a long way, and we've seen it go a long way to reducing poverty, reducing teen pregnancy, reducing unwanted children, of children being put into foster care or being put up for adoption and never adopted and ending up in the foster care system, because these teenagers end up getting pregnant. They can't afford the child. They're not emotionally ready to take care of the child, and the child either ends up becoming abused and taken away by the system. They end up getting put directly into the system straight out of the womb, or the child grows up in poverty, in constant starvation, and gets a substandard education because the parents of that child were not able to live somewhere because of financial reasons where they would have access to a decent school. Teen pregnancy leads to a shit ton of terrible outcomes, and the access to abortion is a massive way that we can go about reducing the harm that those things cause to our society. Abortions, in my opinion, is a net good. Even if you believe that a fertilized egg is a full-blown human being, it still reduces the amount of harm to society.
Is responsible for creating has to die, but it's okay because she's gonna go get a degree, probably in something useless, and she got
probably in something useless. Yes, because women only get useless degrees. That's why there are no women lawyers and no women in STEM. There are no women executives in corporations or in business, no women on the stock market, no women doctors, no women surgeons. No. A lot of women end up getting very useful degrees. It's just there are societal stigmas that prevent or discourage women from going into those fields, which is driving people toward less useful degrees because they're conditioned to believe that they aren't, or drives women into less useful degrees because they've been conditioned to believe that they have no place in those fields. But we're actively breaking down those barriers. I don't know why they constantly go with this argument. It's like, if you go to college, it's just going to be a useless degree in gender studies. That's not the most common degree that people get. Plenty of people go into STEM, and plenty of women go into STEM, and more women are going into STEM every single year.
to secrete some dopamine and oxytocin along the way. Was it worth it, Mommy?
Yes.
I know we're not close anymore.
True.
And I'm the last person that you want to help.
Accurate.
But I need your help, and I don't have anywhere else to go.
Go where?
To get the thing.
Okay, he's just
Teen
showing the
pregnancy is
trailer
quirky.
again.
Killing babies is quirky. This is definitely not a cope. It's not like when people celebrate their abortions, they have to assure us that they don't regret it, that it was the best decision that they ever made. Yeah, okay, which one of us?
They have to, because they're constantly shamed for it. Of course they're going to talk about it in a positive light because people shit on them all the time for getting this procedure. Yeah, makes sense.
Are you trying to convince me, or you? Celebrating abortion is a cope. Women are much more likely to develop anxiety disorders, depression, substance abuse problems, or to commit suicide after they've had an abortion. And the left's answer to this is because everything ever.
I doubt that. Let's go ahead and fact check that. Abortion and mental health. Ah. I just saw it in the little summary right there. What is this? This looks like a blog of some sort. What is this? NCBI, National Library of Medicine. Okay. Seems pretty reliable. Conclusion, after accounting for confounding variables, abortion was not a statistically significant predictor of subsequent anxiety, mood, impulse control, and eating disorders or suicidal ideation. Would you look at that? You're wrong, and it took me a 10-second Google search.
Has been socially constructed. It's because people like you make them feel bad about it, which again is a cope.
That's true.
And I also like how this is the problem.
No, it's not a cope. It's legit. You made a 22-minute video shitting on women for a medical procedure. See, when it says accounting for confounding variables, this is one of those variables. Videos like this do, and people who hold these opinions and are very vocal about this kind of reactionary shit about abortion, would lead women to being more suicidal and having higher levels of anxiety and depression. But that's one of the confounding variables that study accounted for. And the abortion itself did not statistically increase the risk of anxiety, suicidal ideation, eating disorders, blah, 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 blah. It's people like this that is one of those confounding variables that does lead to that increase, because women are shit on for getting a basic medical procedure done. You are the reason, John Doyle, not abortion.
The film. The central conflict is not that the girl is pregnant. It's not that she's inheriting this responsibility. The problem is, oh, I'm definitely going to kill it. It's just going to be kind of tricky because I can't let my parents find out about it because, you know, they would stop me. And that's inconvenient to what I want, which of course just reinforces the eternal antagonist as the parents and their Christian moral code. Remember, the girl referred to the parents as a Jesus freak.
Yeah, they had a picture of the Pope on the wall. I'd say her parents are pretty religious, and religious people tend to have very reductive and reactionary views when it comes to a woman's right to choose. I don't blame her for not wanting her parents to find out. A lot of women in religious households that need to get this procedure end up being emotionally, verbally, and sometimes physically abused, or even find themselves homeless. I don't blame her for not wanting to tell her parents. If I was a woman in the household I grew up with, I wouldn't want to tell my parents.
Parents using Jesus freak or anything adjacent as a pejorative is the biggest rhetorical cope in the history of the English language. What is it?
It's always, he keeps saying that it's a cope. Talking about abortion is coping. Saying that people like you are the reason they're suicidal is coping. Calling Jesus freaks is coping. Why is this all coping? Where are you getting this information from? How do you know this is a cope and them just not expressing themselves and having a negative opinion of people that are pieces of shit to them?
What does it mean to be a Jesus freak? Like, bro, you're so pious. Ha ha, bro, I bet the only thing you kneel for is Christ and not literally any minority who asks you to. What an idiot. Bro, I bet you keep a pure mind and don't even watch cartoon animals have sex. What a loser. It's such a cope.
There we go, a cope again. And that was a big ass fucking straw man. Holy shit. If you're not a Christian, you're into gay furry porn. Taking a knee for the Black Lives Matter movement is somehow anti-Christian. I don't understand that. Jesus Christ, this guy is... Holy shit, he is coping. He is coping with people not liking his line of thinking. Holy fuck.
And I'm not saying all atheists are like that, but the people who are like that, these very disgusting, hedonistic, degenerate people, the people who would use...
Degenerate, okay. Us atheists are degenerates. If we speak out against the terrible parts of religion. Okay.
Jesus freak as an insult. They're all atheists. And we can talk about the difference.
Or agnostic, or belong to another religion that doesn't follow this Cesare Borgia version of Christ. Policy. Just fun fact, every white depiction of Jesus that you've seen throughout your life is not a depiction of Jesus. It's a picture of, it is a depiction of Cesare Borgia, the son of Pope Alexander. He wanted to immortalize his family, so he had all of the brown depictions of Jesus, because Jesus was Middle Eastern, replaced with a portrait of his son, along with all of the statues, artwork, and anything else that you've seen. If you've seen a white Jesus, you're not looking at Jesus. You're looking at Cesare Borgia.
All day long, but really what it comes down to is the original and eternal conflict between good and evil. This is not Republicans versus Democrats or conservatives versus liberals. This is good versus evil, and we'll get more in depth with that in a second.
This is not good versus evil.
Most important thing to be thinking about.
This is not good versus evil, buddy. This is progressive people versus regressive people. This is not good versus evil. As I said before, access to abortion reduces the amount of harm to society. I would consider that to be good.
When looking at things like this, because you look outside the state of the country, the state of the world. Once you accept that, everything else just makes sense. And of course, I would never go as far as to say something like the movie is satanic. However, if Satan...
You said that it was satanic earlier in the video. You did say that.
Yes, we're producing content. This is about exactly what it would look like.
No. I mean, maybe, but Satanists aren't these evil people that you think they are. Have you looked into the tenets held by the Church of Satan? They're much more progressive than Christians. I'll give you that, but they aren't evil by any means, and neither is abortion. But that's neither here nor there. This is not the kind of content that Satanists would exclusively put out. He's trying to villainize anybody that holds these views as being satanic, because he, as a Christian, believes that the ultimate evil in the world is Satan, because the big book told me so.
Not, hey girl, I need your help raising this child, or with completing the pregnancy and putting it up for adoption, which would be so easy since there are huge waiting lists for newborn babies at any given time.
No, I'm sorry. I don't know. Let's find out if that's accurate while I go off on a little bit of a rant here. But hang on. Waiting list for newborn adoption. It's difficult to find reliable statistics to answer this question. Some sources estimate there are about 2 million couples waiting to adopt in the United States, which means as many as 36 waiting families for every one child is placed up for adoption. So that may be accurate. However, access to adoption is ridiculously difficult. It is incredibly financially taxing to adopt a child for some fucking reason. There are shit tons of children in the foster care system waiting to be adopted, and despite the fact that there are millions of parents waiting or trying to adopt a child, the financial roadblocks in the way of adopting a child prevents a lot of them from adopting, and shit tons of kids every single year from being adopted. It's not just as simple as I'll take your baby. Okay, here's my baby. Sign this. Okay, you have the baby now. There's a lot of money involved in adopting a child. So while you could put the child up for adoption, that child is just going to end up in the system. And to top that all off, if a child ends up in the system and grows past the point of being a newborn, their likelihood of being adopted goes down significantly, because, as I've seen in media my entire life, parents only want the puppies. They only want newborn children. The older a child gets, the lower their chances of actually being adopted are. And if you cannot find a family that is financially able to pay the money necessary to adopt your child right out the gate, and they end up in that system, they're probably going to stay in that system their entire lives. Adoption is not at least in the current form that we have now, with the way we have it set up, adoption is not a viable replacement for a necessary medical procedure. But even if it was, women should still have the right to bodily autonomy. They should still have the right to control what happens with their own bodies. Simple as that.
No, we're actually just going to go kill it, and I'm not going to tell my parents because I don't need them reminding me that what I'm doing is selfish and wrong.
It's not wrong, and it's not selfish. It's not a person. You're not killing anybody, and it's your life it's their life that is going to be significantly impacted and pretty much destroyed from an unwanted pregnancy that you cannot afford.
Yes.
Oklahoma, Texas, New Mexico. We'll be in Albuquerque by...
This is also a sad representation of access to abortion care in America, because this is not uncommon that a woman would need to cross multiple states to get access to abortion care. There are several states in this country that have one abortion clinic, and the state regulations on abortion make it damn near inaccessible for anybody to be able to have access to that abortion, even if they can get there. There are waiting periods and things like that, where if you don't have the money to go across your state and stay there in a hotel for multiple days, you can't get access to abortion. It's disgusting.
Tomorrow night? No. And we'll be home Sunday evening. I'm setting the alarm for 5 a.m.
Self-care, huh? I had to post something so people wouldn't bother me. Of course, so people wouldn't know you're with me. We both know you wouldn't do the same for me.
You made it really hard to be your friend.
I'm sorry that I couldn't be perfect for you all the time. I needed you to be perfect.
I appreciate everything you've done.
So he's just showing like the
Relationship between these two girls than on the relationship. It's just incredible. And it's that the film is going to emphasize more on the relationship between these two girls than on the relationship between the mother and her child. They're going to make...
because that's what the movie is about. The movie is about these two friends, or I guess as they stated in the trailer, they weren't actually friends, but I guess find a friendship during this trek across America. These two friends going and getting this young woman access to a medical procedure that she couldn't get at home. That's what the movie's about. Her need to get abortion services was I forget the word for it, but the reason why the plot continued. The plot is about these two young women. They're just going to the abortion is the MacGuffin that they need to get. That they need to. That's the reason why the plot is advancing. But the plot is about these two women.
make this relationship appear to be more significant and more emotional than the relationship between the mother and her child. And the
It's not a child, it's a zygote, it's a clump of cells. She does not have a child.
reason for that is that they don't want to acknowledge a relationship. It doesn't exist. It's not a child. It's not even a life. It's
Exactly, true.
just a clump of cells. The real focus here is on the fact that the one girl hasn't always been so nice to the other girl, but now they're uniting together to kill a kid because girl power. And
Not a
abortion is
kid.
actually a very simple issue. Like, it gets overcomplicated because both sides have very vested
You're right, it is a very simple issue. It's a medical procedure that women should have access to. They should have control over their own bodies. Simple as that. He's going to say something different, but that's basically what the issue is.
interests in the outcomes, and so we get into these complex philosophical and bioethical discussions, but then we also get into these less intelligent, no uterus, no opinion type discussions. But when you clear all the smoke away, it just boils down to
Well, yeah, if you don't have a uterus, if you're not capable of carrying a child, then you shouldn't regulate somebody else's body that is capable of doing that. It's a bunch of crusty old white dudes that are telling people that they can't have a child.
if that is a human life, then you can't kill it. And the problem with that is that it's fairly easy to prove that what occupies
It's not a human life. It is not a person. It is completely dependent on the host, the mother's body, to provide it with oxygen and nutrients and blood. If it did not have that, it would not survive. Simple as that. It cannot process its own food. It cannot process its own nutrients. Nutrient-rich blood has to be pumped into the organism. It cannot process its own oxygen at all. Oxygen-rich blood has to be pumped into it as well. And it does not manufacture its own blood. It has to be supplied with blood from the host, from the mother. That's what a zygote. That's what it is. It's not a person. It does not have personhood. Jesus, I don't want to go too deep into my opinions on my opinions on what constitutes a human being, because we would be here forever, and this video is already running over a half an hour. But yeah, it's not a person.
these wombs are human beings and that they are alive. And so that
No, they're not.
presupposes that human life has value, which is actually not something that the right and left agree upon anymore, which is why
No, human life does have value. This is not a human life. You are a human, and while I don't believe that your ideas are very good, your life itself does have value, as does mine. This thing is not a human being. This is not a full human. It's not a person.
from there, the left will get into arguments like, well, it's not enough to be a human being. It has to have personhood, as defined by whichever arbitrary metric is most convenient at the time, be it sentience, viability, etc. Or, well, that doesn't matter because
It's not arbitrary. There is a point in the pregnancy where the fetus could survive outside of the womb if it were removed at that point, and at that point, in my opinion, that's when it gains personhood. It's just the same as if somebody's being artificially kept alive by machines, by life support. I don't believe that person has personhood anymore because they're no longer living. They cannot process their own oxygen. They can't process their heart is being artificially pumped for them. They're being pumped with nutrients and oxygen. They cannot do that on their own, and I think it's cruel to keep those people alive in a vegetative state on artificial life support. I think it's cruel. But the thing is, I'm not telling those people what they can do with their own body. You are trying to tell women what they can do with their own bodies, and trying to ascribe personhood to a clump of cells or a fetus that cannot survive on its own outside of the womb to try and control women. That is your whole goal.
we have bodily autonomy.
You try and shroud it in this guise of moral outrage and ascribing personhood to something that's not a person, when really ultimately the goal of these pro-birthers is simply to control women. It is a tool used to control women, and that's what we're fighting against.
Which means that we can do what we want regardless. My body, my choice. And so again,
Yes.
the conflict is much less right versus left, pro-life versus pro-choice. It really just comes down to whether you believe that human life has unique value. Do you really think these women that march in Washington screaming at the top of their lungs about how it's their right to abort their children if they want to go get a sociology degree, do you really think that the problem
It's always sociology degrees. It's always women's studies degrees. Women get more degrees than that, dude. Jesus fucking
there
Christ.
is that they just don't recognize that they're killing innocent human life? No.
They're not.
The problem is that they don't value innocent human life, especially if it interferes with their
Yes, they do, but it's not a human life. There's a difference between a baby and a fetus. I guarantee you, if you put this guy in a laboratory and you handed him a petri dish with a fertilized egg and a full-blown baby and said that he had to throw one of them at the ground and he had a gun to his head, he would throw the petri dish to the floor. Because he can, in that moment, he would recognize the inherent difference between a fertilized egg or a fetus and a full-blown baby, a human being.
Conveniences their subjective desires. That's why the old arguments don't really work anymore. I mean, we used to be able to say things like, hey, have you at least considered that if you're wrong, it would mean that you're advocating for the murder of children? Because now that's not even effective anymore, because it assumes that they'd agree that we're wrong, even if the mainstream narrative didn't support it, and it inconveniences their lifestyle. It gets back to whether we even agree that innocent human life has unique value. And again, that's just a conflict between good and evil.
No, it's not a conflict between good and evil. You're just wrong about what constitutes a human being. There's more trailer. I don't want to get copyright striked. So
take about this film is that it's not going to be funny, and it's going to be for the same reason that it's very difficult for women to be funny in general, because there are approved strains of female comedy. Female comedy is always about rejecting the
Is this the idea that women aren't funny? Holy shit, I didn't think he'd go quite this misogynistic, but holy fuck.
perceived standards of morality and feminine behavior. It's not created, nor is it viewed to make the intended audience feel good in an amusing way or in a funny way, but rather to energize them through communicating to them that these women are rejecting those oppressive patriarchal standards and they're having fun while doing it. Look, they're on a roller coaster while pregnant? What? These wild and crazy girls aren't supposed to do that. That's why, generally speaking, female comedy is always like, I eat lots of food, I'm messy, I have sex with lots of men, I get pregnant and murder the children for...
So this dude just fucking hates women. Holy fuck. Jesus Christ. This is the same argument that these chuds were making when what was that actress that did that Netflix comedy special that caused Netflix to get rid of the star rating? I forget off the top of my head. But this is the argument that they always throw at women comedians to try and invalidate their comedy, is that women are only funny when they say these jokes. Women can be funny. It's just you don't find them funny because you don't like their kind of comedy. If they use comedy you don't like, that must mean all women aren't funny. That's not true. You just don't personally like it. Jesus Christ, this guy's so fucking misogynistic. Holy fuck.
Sport, etc. And male comedy is generally, actually funny. And of course there are exceptions to this, but the problem is that because those
women aren't funny, but men are, because reasons.
Exceptions don't fit the approved narrative, they don't find as much mainstream success. But it's also interesting how the title cards mentioned that her life got off track and now she must forge her own path. And that's actually really deep when you think about it. Like, I wonder if the person who wrote that is pro-life. Maybe they're a fan of the show, because what that's saying is like, okay, you were perhaps behaving recklessly. You weren't ready to be a mother, but you were still actively having sex with men who you presumably wouldn't want to father your children. This wasn't supposed to happen, but guess what?
This is more purity culture bullshit. Having sex is bad because sex should only be used for the purpose of procreation. It's a recreational activity. It can be used to create children, but it's a recreational activity.
It did happen. And now you have a choice to make. You have to forge your destiny. You have to forge your own path. Are you going to take responsibility for your actions, or are you going to run from them? Are you going to allow this child to live his or her life, or are you going to take that from them because you're a coward and because you're selfish? And this...
No, it's because... Oh my Jesus fucking Christ. Having an abortion does not make somebody a coward. It does not make somebody selfish. It makes a woman having bodily autonomy does not make her selfish. It does not make her cowardly. Wanting to have a fulfilling life in the way that she feels is fulfilling to her is not selfish. You have the same options. If you had sex, John Doyle, I know that you wouldn't, but if you had sex with a woman and got her pregnant, you would have the ability to leave the situation and pursue your own goals, dreams, and ideals. Whereas the woman in your society, if the world worked the way you wanted it to, would be trapped. They would be trapped with a child they did not want or could not financially support, and their life would come to a dead stop in many situations, because not a lot of people in this country have the financial assets to both afford childcare and a career or an education or pursue those things while caring for a child, because it's fucking expensive to have a kid. Trust me. I get that you have these very puritanical worldviews where sex should only be should only exist in the confines of marriage for the purpose of procreation, but you are a significant minority in that line of thinking in this country nowadays. And I get that people thinking differently than you scares you, but that's the reality you have to make peace with. Otherwise, you're just denying reality like you're claiming these people are.
Girl even says to the guy, who I think is actually the father of the child, well, it's my life and it's my choice. And we first have to ask her to check her privilege, because isn't she fortunate? Isn't she fortunate to have the power in the situation? Do you think she'd feel the same way if she were in the position of the child? There's a great
Jesus Christ. I'm not
Reagan
even,
quote,
Jesus.
which is, I've noticed that everyone who is pro-choice has already been born. And that's absolutely true. These are people who have been born. Their parents have made sacrifices to give them life, and they're unwilling to carry the torch for their own selfish reasons. So no, it's not actually your life, and it's not actually your choice, because you don't just get
It is. It's not a life, and the existence of that fetus that would eventually become a life would destroy theirs. Oh my God, this guy is so fucking infuriating, and all I'm doing is repeating myself because he's making the same appeals to emotion over and over and over again. Yes, this guy is pro-life. But all of his arguments are simply appeals to emotion. There's no facts or statistics or medical information to back up anything that he's saying. The one time he listed anything relating to an actual medical community, what he actually said was fucking wrong, and it was actually the opposite of what he said. But every single argument he's making here is an appeal to emotion because he knows he doesn't have an actual logical leg to stand on. That's why he keeps saying kid instead of fetus, or unborn child instead of fetus, or pregnancy, and keeps referring to abortion as murder, because he has to appeal to the emotions of the viewer and to the people that think the same way he is, because if you call it anything other than murder, then you have to recognize that the fetus is not a person. The only arguments that these pro-life people have are appeals to emotion. My body, my choice. He's a man. He doesn't get a say in it. True.
get to do whatever you want simply by virtue
Very
of your being alive, and simply by virtue of your ability to do whatever you want, hypothetically. Like, what an unfortunate reality this is. What an unfortunate time we live in, where people construct their livelihoods convincing young women that
It's so unfortunate that women have rights, right? Isn't that right, buddy?
not only is motherhood unimportant, it's actually undesirable, and they make money doing it.
It's undesirable to some people. It's very desirable to others. It depends on what the person wants individually.
We all become more miserable as a result, as our country deteriorates in front of us, as the greatest civilization in the history of the world slowly dies, as we have failed to carry the torch passed down by our ancestors because we're selfish and because we thought that we could ignore conventional wisdom. We thought
More appeals to emotion. Jesus Christ. As I said earlier, unwanted pregnancies being carried to term does significantly more harm to society than terminating an unwanted pregnancy. So fighting against abortion is actually doing exactly what he's claiming abortion does, which is destroying our society. I know I know the direction that his arguments ultimately take when he talks about society, but that's a completely different video. But I just want to reiterate, all of his opinions and all of his arguments here are simply appeals to emotion. It depends on what the person wants and what they can do. Babies cost so much, not everyone can afford to raise a child. True.
that we could elevate evil and remain
And that's one thing I've been saying to the whole video, is that children that are born into two parents that cannot afford them have a terrible quality of life. They have substandard housing. They're in typically food insecure families, are straight up starving. They live in areas where they don't have access to a decent education, and many other things that cause the quality of life for that child that was forced into existence to be incredibly low. Whereas I'm sorry, but I would rather have not been born than to starve to death. That's just me. And that's the argument a lot of people make. It's better for people to not be born than to suffer a miserable experience and die due to the conditions that you were born in.
good. Okay, for the record, none of what I'm about to say is necessarily to make an argument against abortion. I'm more than capable of arguing against abortion in a completely secular framework, as I have done many times on this channel before.
No, all of your arguments are appeals to emotion. You don't have any facts or logic to back it up, so you can't argue from a secular standpoint.
but I'm doing it. I'm going big time preacher mode now. So click away if you're not ready for this information yet. And if you stick around, you don't get to complain about, well, he's forcing his beliefs on us. Yeah, that's what I do. But you're okay with it when it's about gun control, when it's about climate change, but when it's about, I don't know, the truth of our existence, which requires you to be a good person, well, then you don't want to hear it. But that's okay. I'm not really speaking to those people anyways. I'm speaking.
You guys are mean to me, so click away before I say things that'll make you be mean to me. An unwanted child being born isn't going to be loved in the way they need to be either, or they could be abused just because they were born. That is incredibly true. So many children are subject to abuse emotionally, physically, and psychologically because they're treated terribly by their parents that view them as a burden on their lives and the reason why they couldn't achieve the goals that they wanted, and they end up having a miserable experience because of it. Very true.
Speaking to those who recognize that we have incessantly dismissed the conflict between good and evil as merely a difference of opinion. And we have allowed ourselves to be seduced by those acting on behalf of evil when they tell us that this wonderful
This is not evil
and benevolent country of ours was actually founded so that everything could be free to propagate, whether that be good or evil. And if we try to stop it, well, you're just enforcing your morality on me, and that's anti-American. And, you know, ignoring for now that the founding fathers would actually disagree with that if you read their actual writings and not just out of context quotes that go viral on Facebook, we have given the heart of our country to evil forces, and we are seeing.
What evil forces are you talking about? The fact that we've moved away from religion as a country, thank God. I say thank God as talking about moving away from religion, but the founding fathers were not Christian. They were deists or secularists. Some of them were non-religious entirely. People like this believe that America was founded on Christian values and that we're a Christian nation. We're not a Christian nation. We are a nation of freedom of religion, which also includes freedom from religion. And many of the founding fathers were not Christian, and they certainly did not build this country on the basis of Christian religious theology. So I'm not sure what he's talking about where we've allowed evil to take over this country. Is it, I'm assuming what he means by evil is not Christian. Abortion isn't evil and non-religion isn't evil. True. I'm an agnostic atheist, and I'm not an evil person. I consider myself a very good person. I just don't believe in a magical sky daddy. And at the same time, I completely and fully support a woman's right to choose what she does with her own body, and I would not try to force my viewpoint on them if I felt that it was actually a child, a full-blown human inside of them, which I don't, but even if I did, I would not force my views on that person.
The results of their work every day. And you and I really didn't have a say in it. And that makes us really angry. But you know who it makes even angrier? Him. It makes him.
Him, God. That's who he's talking about.
Angrier. It's the same conflict as always. I mean, good and evil. It's impossible to talk about that conflict without talking about the big man, right? Because we've taken everything that is good and righteous and pure and beautiful, and we have mocked it. We have instead elevated everything that is evil and disgusting to the core.
Are you going to provide examples, or are you just going to speak in vague generalities? Because you don't have specific examples to back up what you believe is evil. It's just things you don't like. What if it was me? If I got pregnant again and didn't want it, would you support me? Absolutely. I'd drive you to the clinic.
Core of our society. Our culture has become an abomination. Abortion, materialism, greed, hedonism.
That's my wife in the chat, by the way, in case anybody's wondering.
Gluttony, lust, convenience, endless entertainment. All of that has distracted us from the most important truth of all, which is that God will not be mocked. And you can roll your eyes.
I mean, he gets mocked a lot, bro. Have you not been on the internet? Holy shit, what the fuck are you talking about? Your God gets mocked all the time, and he doesn't seem to do fucking anything about it.
You can keep your pride. Keep recycling to yourself the same tired George Carlin monologue or your favorite excerpt from the Richard Dawkins book, which you only read half of. None of that will matter because you will bow and you will confess just like...
Holy shit, dude. This guy is like a fucking religious zealot. First of all, I'm more of a Christopher Hitchens kind of guy myself. I never really got into George Carlin when I was moving away from religion and went on my whole atheist journey. I did watch a lot of Richard Dawkins. I watched a lot of Christopher Hitchens. And of course, like the YouTubers, Armored Skeptic, Jacqueline Glenn, The Bible Reloaded, things like that. I never really got into George Carlin, but this dude is like a religious zealot. You will bow? Holy fuck. He wasn't kidding.
Everyone else, and you will be humbled to learn that a life dedicated to the worship of the self does not make you more than the dust at his feet. And so when you're
no, I won't. Holy shit. No, I fucking won't.
Scratching your head trying to piece all this together. You're thinking, well, now why would people do this? What's the goal here? It would seem that the belief that God would refuse to end all that is beautiful through his creation if there were good people who may die. And so those who have been corrupted by satanic forces are working to ensure that there are no good people left anymore. So he ends all creation because since Satan is not nearly strong enough to corrupt or destroy God, he has to force God to destroy his own creation by corrupting it entirely, which
Didn't in the Bible, didn't God promise to not destroy all of humanity, or was that only from a flood? I know that this kid believes that Armageddon is coming and God is going to destroy the world with fire and brimstone and shit like that, which is absolutely asinine and ridiculous. But I distinctly remember in the Bible, God promised not to murder everybody until the second coming. There hasn't been no second coming yet, buddy. When's it gonna happen? They've been predicting it for generations. When's it gonna fucking happen? I get that you're incredibly religious and you're entitled to those opinions, but the part where I take issue with it is when you try to push your religious views on other people and demand that they live their lives based on your personal views and opinions. He's not a good Christian. Jesus died for everyone's sins, not the Bible thumper sins. I could murder someone and then shoot myself and still get into heaven. Technically speaking, according to the Bible, suicide is one of the sins that prevents you from getting into heaven, at least according to the Catholic Church. But yeah, Osama bin Laden, one of the most famous terrorists in modern history, could have murdered all of those people, and then right before he took a bullet between the eyes, said, "I accept Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior," and gone to heaven. Hitler is in heaven. Hitler was a Christian, and he murdered millions of people. He tried to genocide the Jews and eradicated a large portion of the Jewish population in Europe, and yet he's still in heaven. Yeah, your religious ideology, your theology, whatever you want to call it, is massively fucked. I don't care if you personally believe these things, John Doyle. It's when you try to force other people to live their lives according to your values is when I take issue with it.
Which is us, and all that was once good and beautiful. And if you think this sounds crazy, like I used to until a couple of years ago, you should just look outside. You should read more. There is no other explanation, and I refuse.
There are a lot of other explanations for what's going on in the world, and none of them have to do with some magical sky daddy that's judging everybody, but doing nothing about it and not intervening in any way at all, or at least not in any noticeable way. If if your God truly felt the way that you claim that he does, he is as all-powerful as you and your religious books say that he is, he could fix the world with a snap of his fingers. He wouldn't even have to snap. He could just fix everything. If he is truly as powerful as you claim he is, and he isn't, he hasn't done that, why hasn't he fixed things? If he is this giant reckoning force, and the world has devolved into such evil that he needs to intervene, why hasn't he done it yet?
Refuse to withhold this information because some people might get mad and not stick around for the next time I talk about why socialism equals bad, because this is the root of our conflict.
I'm going to venture to guess you don't understand what socialism actually is. But go on, buddy.
And fundamentally the root of all conflict. And only when you understand that can you begin to make sense of what's really going on in our world. Hey guys, if you like...
All right, yeah, proselytize on your own time. So that was John Doyle. That was fun. A lot of appeals to emotion, and then his religious rantings at the end. All these Christians saying so many people are going to hell is ridiculous. They're acting like Jesus didn't die, so they had the right... hang on. They're acting like Jesus didn't die, so they had the right to live the way they wanted to. That's why he dies. It says it in their Bible. Exactly. Jesus died, according to Christian theology. Jesus died to forgive mankind's of sin so that they could all get into the kingdom of heaven. If you don't sin, Jesus died for nothing, man. Why would you want to make your Lord and Savior's death meaningless? If you don't sin, he died for nothing.